Greetings everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Let's get right back into some more Pathfinder content. And this time, I want to finally do a video that many of you have actually requested from me. And that's about party composition in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Of course, you've got a bunch of different builds, bunch of different party members, bunch of different ways you can try to approach the game, and it can be kind of complicated figuring out what actually matters, what can you absolutely not do without, and where you have some wiggle room to kind of play around with things. First and foremost, let me be clear. Everything I'm about to say is about perspective. I can guarantee you, as soon as this video goes up, there'll be people in the comments telling me you're dead wrong, here's what I would have done differently, here's what you missed, blah, 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 blah. And I'm looking forward to seeing and reading all the feedback. I am not presenting this information as the end-all be-all. Pathfinder is all about being able to customize and move things around however you wish. But I've played through the beta several times at this point, so I am absolutely confident that if you follow these general guidelines, you will have a relatively smooth playthrough. That doesn't mean it's the only way to have a quality playthrough, okay? So now that that's been established, before we get into specific party members, I want to lay down some general guidelines that I feel like you should follow when putting together your teams. There are some things that I feel like you definitely want to have. First and foremost, you want to have a frontline fighter, preferably more than one. Now that does not mean you must have a character like Greybor or Woljiv or Sela on your team. You can respec and re-gear just about any party member into someone who's a competent, if not flat out excellent, frontline fighter. This just means that you need to have somebody or a couple of people on the team who are responsible for running out and meeting the enemy for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to take heat off of your backline. Two, it's going to allow you to take advantage of the plethora of attacks of opportunity that you'll be able to get in the game. There are a lot of enemies that love to run past the front line to the back line and start attacking your archers and mages. So if you have frontline fighters who can preferably do more than one attack of opportunity per round, you'll be able to take advantage of that and oftentimes cut those enemies down before they even get to your back line. Also, if you have frontline fighters that are rushing out to meet the enemy, it'll help group the enemies closer together, making it easier for your archers and your mages to be able to take them out in bunches. And then finally, having a balanced distribution of roles on your team, meaning some melee fighters, some mages, some archers, is going to allow you to have better item distribution in the game as well. There are limited necklaces, rings, wristbands, armors, things of that nature in the game. So if you have 4 or 5 people who are all mages, you're going to have a limited amount of items that are going to be useful to all those different people. The more varied the builds are on the teams that you run, the more likely you're going to be able to kit all of them out with items and armors and weapons that are actually useful for the builds that they're using and make your party more effective overall. In addition to a frontline fighter, I definitely feel like you need a healer. Doesn't matter how great you are, doesn't matter how well you've built your party, you're going to get hit. And in some cases, you're going to get hit hard. And you need someone who can deal with those situations. Now, again, it doesn't mean that you need a cleric like Soseo or an oracle like Darren. You can have an alchemist who creates potions that's distributed through the team, and they all heal themselves that way. Doesn't matter how you get it done. But you need to make sure when your health goes down or when you're in the thick of it, there's somebody who can step up and make sure that all of your party members are able to stay upright. In addition, there are some buffs that between the 6 members on your team, you want to make sure can get distributed and applied to all the people who are going to need them. In addition to those 2 roles, there are some buffs that you absolutely want to make sure you can apply to your team. It's going to make your playthrough a lot easier. I'm not going to go through what they do because a lot of you have been watching my build videos anyway, so you know what they do already. You're probably familiar with these powers. But just to go through the list: Death Ward, Remove Fear, See Invisibility Communal, True Seeing Communal, Restoration, Restoration Greater, and Delayed Poison Communal, to me, are absolute lifesavers and buffs that you absolutely want to make sure your team has available. There's also a list of buffs that I feel like are very, very nice and are really going to help your team, but I wouldn't call them necessary. But if you can have them, it's really going to help your party out a lot. Bark Skin, Holy Aura, Haste, Stone Skin Communal, Protection from Arrows Communal, Dimension Door, and then Protection from Energy along with Resist Energy are all going to help your party immensely. I specifically want to point out Bark Skin because one of the major advantages of having this available is that it frees up a necklace slot for your melee fighters. Bark Skin is going to apply a natural armor bonus onto whoever you select. If your party does not have access to Bark Skin, you put your melee fighters in a position where they instead have to use the necklaces that provide them that same buff. So if at all possible, it's really nice to have Bark Skin available, but unfortunately, only Camellia and Arwol Chalet have access to that particular spell. Next up is skills. Mind you, in my opinion, all the skills are actually really important. They come up a lot, and there's no skill except maybe use magic device that you won't benefit from focusing on, but there are a few that are absolutely essential. Religion limits the amount of corruption your party receives while you're camping. Absolute must, you want somebody who specializes in it. Stealth prevents your party from being ambushed while they're sleeping. Again, another absolute must. Perception is used to decide how quickly your party reacts in the event that they are ambushed. So essentially, those three skills all together ensure that you have the smoothest time possible when you're camping out in the wild. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself in a position where you're going to be snuck up on while you're trying to sleep, and they're going to do a ton of damage because you're not going to be able to react quickly, and you're going to end up being stopped a lot while you're traveling around on the map with the random fights because you won't have enough stealth to just evade those particular groups. You also want to have somebody who specializes in trickery. There's a lot of locked doors, locked chests, and things of that nature in the game, and oftentimes they have some really, really nice loot in them. So you need a party member who's going to enable you to get past those. Now, I wouldn't consider this a must-have, but I do believe you get a lot more out of your playthrough if you have somebody who specializes in persuasion. There are a lot of opportunities to be able to persuade people or intimidate people to get much better results than you would otherwise. And honestly, it's worth trying to specialize in persuasion on your main character, because I believe there are several instances where the game will only look at your main character's persuasion stat as opposed to your overall team. So then my final note before we get into actual different team compositions is that if you plan to play turn-based a lot during your playthrough, having an archer on your squad is a huge difference maker. Doesn't really work that way in real time with pause. In turn-based, if you kick things off with your archer, they'll get to do a full attack. And oftentimes they can kill 1, 2, 3 enemies before the initiative roll is finished and everybody starts doing their regular turns. So it's a huge difference maker, as opposed to in real time with pause, where they might kill one enemy, but then by the time they're about to start attacking the other enemy, the whole team has already ran up and is essentially engaging everybody. So it's not quite as advantageous, but in turn-based, archers are absolutely monsters. So here's an example of a party that I would probably take if I was doing a demon playthrough. I would trade out land for Windowog, but unfortunately I didn't have Windowog on this playthrough, so I can't show you that. But this gives me just about everything that I need. Woljif and Greyboard together can serve as my frontline fighters, even though both of them are more so off tanks. If you have really good buffs and make sure that they're properly geared, they should be cutting down enemies quickly enough where they're not going to really get blown up. Windowog is going to serve great as the archer fighter. She gets a ton of arrows per full attack turn. Darren is going to serve as my healer, and he gets some of the buffs that I need, like True Seeing, Communal, Death Ward, Restoration. And then Woljif has Protection from Arrows, Stone Skin, Communal, and Haste, along with Heroism and Greater Heroism. So together, most of the buffs that I need should be covered. And Darren will also get Holy Aura towards, I think, about level 8 or level 9. And then Nanio is definitely the best debuffer party member that you get. So she's going to get the ones that attack Wisdom and that freeze the enemies in place. And she could do a great job of just setting up enemies to make it easy for you to kill them. So strengths of this party: great buffs, great debuffs, strong healing, competent melee fighting, strong archery. Weaknesses: not great magic damage. Like Woljif, if you spec him as an arcane trickster with his sneak attack damage, he's going to do some nice damage to individual targets, but he's never going to get access to the really high level spells. And Nanio, again, she's much more focused on debuffing, so you're not going to be flinging around fireballs with her either. So you can make a decision from there about how you want to spec your main character. You could decide that you wanted to be a caster who can fill in that slot of dealing more direct magic damage, or you could just decide, you know what, I'm comfortable with depending more so on physical damage and roll someone who's going to do the same type of thing that Greyboar and Woljif are already doing. It's completely up to you. So here's an example of a party that's a little bit different. This is probably what I'm going to roll when the full game releases and I do my Lich playthrough. So we've replaced Greyboar with Regal, and they basically serve that same role, frontline fighter, and they both focus more on damage dealing. Regal probably has a little bit more survivability with him being a Hell Knight and having access to the Hell Knight armor. And honestly, I feel like Regal does more damage. Those gnome hooked hammers are no joke. So he is a great frontline fighter. Camellia is actually really nice to have on your team for all the little spells that you need to use that don't require you to have great spell casting talent. So delay poison, death ward, restoration, heal, all these spells that just work no matter how good or bad you are as a spellcaster, you can stick them all on her because she's really going to be running around with her buckler and her rapier. So she's not going to be, at least in the build that I usually run for her, she's not going to be this really great spellcaster. And so it frees up slots for your other spellcasters who really can make the most out of the damaging or debuffing spells. Lan is a great archer. I'm not sure if Lan or Windog is really the better archer option for you. They're both great. They both get a ton of arrows when they do full attacks, and you're not going wrong either way. So it's really more so about personality that you have to decide. We've already talked about Darren. He's going to fill in that healer role for you, give you a bunch of the different buffs that you need. And of course, Nanio is fantastic as well for debuffing. So advantages of this build: once again, you're going to have great debuffs. Your buffs are going to be just okay. You do not have access to heroism in this particular build, and you really don't have access to protection from arrows. I think Nanio has access to it, but for abjuration spells, they take up 2 slots for her instead of just 1. So it's not nearly as easy to have spec as it is when you have Woljif on the team. And then once again, the main weakness of this team is magic damage. You still don't have anyone who's really gonna blow up a room, but that's why I'm speccing Lich for this particular squad, because my Lich will then take on that role as well as being able to provide some fantastic debuffs. So I feel like this squad should be able to tear through just about anything that we come up against in the game. Okay, so now finally, I want to show you the party that I would run as an angel. I'll be honest, in my opinion, this is the strongest party in the game. And I'm curious to hear you all's thoughts. You know, I know some of you haven't had a chance to play the beta, so maybe we'll bring this conversation up again. But in my opinion, this squad beats pretty much just about any other combination that you have. So again, my perspective, Sela is the best frontline fighter in the game. Not only is the paladin spec just absolutely amazing, but they give her a pet and they force you to take the saber-tooth tiger, so which is the most damaging pet in the game. It is all fantastic. So you essentially get a 2-for-1 of great frontline fighters who are going to run out and deal with any issues that come up. Ember is absolutely fantastic for healing, buffs, and magic damage, so she can fill a bunch of different roles for you if you want her to. She gets access to Death Ward, Heroism, and Greater Heroism, and she automatically gets powerful fire spells as she levels up. So just great all the way around. Woljith, I've already spoken about. He's going to give you some great buffs as well. He's the only party member that gets easy access to protection from arrows, and he does very, very solid magic damage. Like I said, I don't feel like he blows up a room the way some of the other magic users do, but he's very, very competent, and he's great as a skill monkey to have trickery and a bunch of the other skills that you want to have access to. Arushale is the only archer that you get who's spec to also be able to use powers, and she also gets bark skin. So she's going to be able to buff herself up, put some nice buffs on your pet as well, and do some really, really nice damage as an archer. Great stuff. In my opinion, Sosale is the best healer in the game. I put him above Darren because Sosale gets a much wider selection of powers he can use. You can use him as an off tank, and he's the only party member who specializes in religion. So if you've been watching my demon playthrough, you'll notice that I have Ember leveling up in religion, even though she's never leveling up in wisdom. So it's kind of weird. With Sosale, it makes much more sense. He already comes with levels in both wisdom and religion, and it makes him the perfect character to make sure that that's all handled. And then for myself, I'm going to be Angel, which is by far one of the most powerful mythic paths in the game. This team just slaps. They run through absolutely everything they come up against. So strengths, just about everything, right? Great buffs, great healing, great archery, great frontline fighting, just absolutely everything works. The weakness of this team is that nobody's debuffing. There's nobody dispelling or taking down attributes for enemies we're going up against, things of that nature. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We just, you can go one of two ways. Either you can debuff enemies and make them easier to deal with, or you can buff your own team to holy hell and just tear through enemies regardless of how powerful they are. Now, of course, that is on normal. On a higher level, you probably do absolutely need somebody who's debuffing enemies that you're going up against. But on normal difficulty, it was not necessary at all. Just running through it with my team as strong as possible was more than enough to handle anything we came up against. All right, and that's the video. So once again, I'm curious to hear your feedback. What party do you feel is the strongest in the game? Is there anything that you feel like a party really should have that I missed in this video? Looking forward to your feedback, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.